Hello fans and friends across the universe. Welcome to my YouTube channel From Me to You. My name is Keir Smith. For today's video I'd like to talk about two songs from George Harrison's 1981 album Somewhere in England. These two songs have always stood out to me and continue to delight my ears even after 100 listens, probably more. And I'll also talk a bit about the man who wrote the songs, because these two songs are cover versions of Hoagy Carmichael's songs. The two songs I'm talking about are Baltimore Oriole and Hong Kong Blues. Hoagy Carmichael is one of the most successful Tin Pan Alley songwriters and composed hundreds of songs in the late 20s through the 30s and 40s, many achieving hit status. But he is best known for composing the music for the classic jazz standard Stardust and Georgia on My Mind, the former sang by Nat King Cole and the latter by Ray Charles. No stranger to the big screen either, Hoagy Carmichael appeared in many films, including the 1944 classic To Have and Have Not, where Hoagy plays a character by the name of Cricket. And in that film, you can see Hoagy perform the song Hong Kong Blues. There's also an instrumental passage of Baltimore Oriole. And later on in his career, Hoagy was also a firm favourite with audiences during the 1950s and 60s on variety shows. So it's highly likely that a young George Harrison saw Hoagy Carmichael in a later rerun of the film To Have and Have Not, or on these variety performances through the 50s and 60s. Now these two songs will have been a labour of love for George, who was clearly a big fan. Hoagy Carmichael wrote Hong Kong Blues in 1939 and Baltimore Oriole in 1942. A gentleman called Paul Francis Webster co-wrote the lyrics with Hoagy for Baltimore Oriole. Now I'm always curious to hear any music by anyone who is associated with or inspirational to the Beatles. And so around 6 or 7 years ago, I bought this CD so I could hear the original versions of Hong Kong Blues and Baltimore Oriole. This is Hoagy Carmichael sings Hoagy Carmichael. So now I'll talk about Hoagy and George's versions of these two songs, which, in comparison, couldn't be more different, which you would expect for two songs recorded around 40 years apart. As I'm sure you can appreciate, the recording technology and the instruments available to an artist recording in the late 30s, early 40s, to that of someone recording in 1981 was enormous. Hoagy's version of Baltimore Oriole is very moody and dramatic, with a stunning string arrangement and some jazzy clarinet flourishes and brush sticks merely keeping time for drums. And vocally, it's almost spoken word, but it's Hoagy's phrasing of the words that is very expressive and dramatises the narrative, that convey a love affair in terms of a bird, a Baltimore Oriole. The lyrics go, "I'd like to ruffle his plumage. That Baltimore Oriole messed around with that big guy till he singed her wings." It's really clever, really well written, evocative. I think it's great. And George's version is very different, of course, but even better. From the opening drum kick to the superb saxophone intro, subtle piano playing and melodic guitar in the verses, with the saxophone chirping in the background, and there's some nice guitar breaks between the verses too, and the synthesized strings that linger in the background and the superb backing vocals add the drama to the song. And George's vocal here is absolute perfection, sung with a soft tone that caresses. But it's the saxophone that makes the song. It is magnificent, none more so than when it stretches out on the outro. Played by Tom Scott, who has appeared on a few George Harrison albums. And I adore George's version of Baltimore Oriole. Many moons ago, I did a video of my top 10 favourite George Harrison solo songs. And I had Baltimore Oriole in the number 5 spot. I stand by that. I think it's that good. On to Hong Kong Blues, and since I bought Hoagy's CD, I found a video on YouTube of him performing that song in the aforementioned film To Have and Have Not. And the version in the film is slightly different to the one that's on the CD, but I must have watched that video 15 times in the last few weeks. It's so good. And in that video, you get to see what a cool guy Hoagy is. He's a showman, no doubt about it. He makes these sudden glances and peers over his shoulder at the ladies around him while he's singing. He plays the piano superbly too. The specific high notes that he plays and the whining whistle in the background really give the song that Eastern flavour. A bit of banjo playing too, which is really nicely done. Everything about the music seems to fit the narrative of the song. It's a great story that takes you through a poor man's plight due to his addiction. And I read in the comment section on YouTube that the lyric, "He got 20 years privilege taken away from him when he kicked old Buddha's gong," was slang among foreign sailors in Asian ports for smoking opium in a joss house, an opium den. And when you hear Hoagy sing, "But when I try to leave, sweet loco man won't let me fly away," the original lyric is actually, "Sweet opium won't let me fly away." But Hoagy had to change the lyric for the film. Yes, sir, they were even censoring lyrics way back then. But anyway, fantastic performance. And if you haven't seen it, I urge you to go and find it on YouTube. And George's version is much more upbeat, so catchy and infectious, opening and closing the song with the sound of a crashing gong to good effect. And it's got this really bright synth melody on the intro, outro, and between the verses, coupled with some excellent guitar playing, as always. And it's mainly a trickling piano and some light percussive flourishes in the verses that give room for the story to be told. But I really like George's arrangement here. He really plays on capturing and updating the instrumentation to give it a glossier Eastern shine. It's brilliantly done. I love these two Hoagy Carmichael songs. It's really clever songwriting. They're great story songs, brilliantly written. But call me biased, and I am. I love George's versions that bit more. There's great care and detail put into the instrumentation, and the arrangements are so great. And without doubt, they are my two favourite songs from his Somewhere in England album. In preparation for this video, I found out that Hoagy Carmichael was born on the 22nd of November 1899. So I guess I should do a video next year celebrating 125 years of Hoagy Carmichael. Hoagy sadly passed away on the 27th of December 1981 at the age of 82. It was nearly 6 months after the release of George's Somewhere in England album, and I wonder if he heard George's versions of his songs before he passed away. George, of course, passed away on the 29th of November 2001, nearly 20 years after Hoagy passed away. Two outstanding musicians and singer-songwriters from very different times. And if nothing else, they certainly delivered two musical treats with Baltimore Oriole and Hong Kong Blues. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Give it the thumbs up if you did. Please subscribe to the channel. There'll be lots more to come. Thanks as always for watching. See you next time.